Ladies and gentlemen, there is a sacred presence that flows through all things, a stillness beyond thought, a guiding force that does not demand but gently invites. This presence is the Holy Spirit, and to walk in its company is to enter into a life of deep peace, wisdom, and grace. May we step into each moment with awareness, surrendering to the presence that is always here, always guiding, always calling us home. The present moment is the gateway to experiencing the Holy Spirit. In a world that constantly pulls our attention toward the past and the future, we often miss the divine presence that is always available in the here and now. Walking in the presence of the Holy Spirit is not about a distant or future state of being. It is about awakening to what is already present, right in this moment. Most people live trapped in the movement of their thoughts. They carry the weight of their past, memories, regrets, experiences that shape their identity. At the same time, they are constantly reaching for the future, planning, worrying, imagining scenarios that may never come to pass. This cycle keeps them from recognizing the sacred presence that exists only in the now. The Holy Spirit does not dwell in the thoughts of yesterday or the uncertainties of tomorrow. It is found in the stillness of this very moment. To enter this space, one must cultivate awareness. Awareness is the ability to observe thoughts without becoming lost in them, to witness emotions without being controlled by them. This is where the shift happens, from being consumed by the mind to becoming present with what is. The Holy speaks not in the language of thought, but in the language of presence. When we are fully present, we become receptive to this divine guidance. Think of a quiet lake. When the surface is disturbed by ripples and waves, it cannot reflect the sky clearly. In the same way, when the mind is filled with noise, it cannot perceive the presence of the Holy Spirit. But when the lake is still, it reflects the beauty of the heavens with perfect clarity. Likewise, when we enter the stillness of the present moment, the divine presence becomes unmistakable. This is not something that needs to be achieved through effort. In fact, striving to be present often takes us further from presence. The moment we say, "I must be more present," we have already placed our awareness in a future goal. Instead, presence happens when we simply allow ourselves to be. It is about relaxing into the moment, becoming deeply conscious of our surroundings, our breath, our very existence. It is about noticing the subtle aliveness in everything, the way the wind moves through the trees, the rhythm of our own heartbeat, the quiet energy that fills the space around us. When we are fully present, we become aware that life is not something happening to us, but something unfolding through us. The Holy Spirit is not separate from us. It moves within us, guiding each step, each breath, each experience, but we must be still enough to recognize. Many seek the Holy Spirit in grand experiences, visions, miracles, extraordinary moments of revelation. But the Spirit is not confined to these things. It is found in the simplest of moments, the warmth of the sun on your skin, the laughter of a child, the stillness of an early morning. The divine presence is always here, waiting to be noticed. To walk in the presence of the Holy Spirit is to live in this state of awareness. It is to move through life not as a constant seeker, but as one who has already found what they were looking for. It is to release the grip of time, the regrets of the past, the anxieties of the future, and rest in the fullness of now. Once we truly understand that the Holy Spirit is not something distant or difficult to reach, but something available in every moment, life transforms. There is no need to chase after meaning, no need to strive for spiritual enlightenment as if it was somewhere outside of us. The gateway to divine presence has always been open. All that is required is for us to step through, to embrace the stillness, and to recognize that we are already walking in the sacred presence we have always sought. Stillness is the essence of divine presence. In a world filled with noise, distractions, and endless movement, it can seem difficult to find the presence of the Holy Spirit. People often seek it in dramatic experiences, external rituals, or intellectual pursuits, yet the Spirit is not found in external noise. It is found in the quiet depth of our own being. To walk in the presence of the Holy Spirit, we must learn to enter the stillness where divine wisdom speaks in silence. Most of our lives are dominated by thoughts, emotions, and reactions. From the moment we wake up, the mind begins its endless stream of activity, planning, analyzing, remembering, and anticipating. It keeps us occupied, filling the space within us with constant movement. But the Holy Spirit does not reside in this mental noise. It is not something that can be grasped through intellectual effort or emotional intensity. It is felt in the silence that exists between thoughts, in the pause between words, in the deep stillness that is always present beneath the surface of life. Imagine walking into a vast, silent cathedral. The absence of noise does not create emptiness. Instead, it allows something sacred to emerge. In that silence, a presence can be felt, a presence that was always there but unnoticed in the midst of sound and distraction. This is how the Holy Spirit reveals itself. It does not compete with the noise of the mind. It waits patiently for us to become still enough to perceive it. When we enter into stillness, we become aware of something deeper than our thoughts. There is a space of pure awareness within us, untouched by worry, fear, or desire. This awareness is where the Holy Spirit moves, guiding us not with words, but a deep inner knowing. It is a sense of peace that transcends understanding, a quiet assurance that we are held, guided, and deeply loved. People often mistake stillness for passivity or emptiness, but this is not the case. True stillness is not the absence of activity, but the presence of awareness. It is the ability to be fully engaged in life without being consumed by the turbulence of the mind. When we cultivate inner stillness, we do not become detached or indifferent. Rather, we become more present, more awake, more attuned to the sacred movement of the Spirit within us. One might ask, how can one cultivate this stillness? The answer is simple, yet profound. It begins with awareness. Simply noticing the mind's tendency to fill every space with thought is the first step. We can practice being present by observing our breath, listening to the natural sounds around us, or feeling the sensation of our own being. In these simple acts of attention, we create space. And in that space, the Holy Spirit is already present. Another way to cultivate stillness is through surrender. Often we resist silence because we fear what it may reveal. The mind clings to distractions, avoiding the depth of the present moment. But when we surrender, when we let go of the need to control, to understand, to grasp, we open ourselves to a presence greater than ourselves. We allow the Holy Spirit to move through us, to guide us, to transform us from within. Over time, as we practice stillness, we begin to notice a shift. No longer feels chaotic or overwhelming. Even in the midst of challenges, there is an underlying sense of peace. Decisions become clearer, not because we have figured them out with logic, but because we have allowed divine wisdom to arise from within. We find that love flows more freely, relationships become more harmonious, and our actions carry a sense of purpose that is not forced but natural. Walking in the presence of the Holy Spirit is not about seeking something outside of ourselves. It is about becoming still enough to recognize what has always been here. It is about awakening to the reality that we are never separate from divine presence. The Spirit is always speaking, always guiding, always waiting for us to be still enough to hear. Letting go of the ego and resistance is essential to walking in the presence of the Holy Spirit. The ego is the part of us that clings to control, that seeks to define itself through identity, status, and external validation. It is the voice that says, I must be right, I must have more, or I must protect myself at all costs. This false self thrives on separation. It sees itself as distinct from others, from life, and from God. But the Holy Spirit does not speak through the ego. It speaks in the quiet spaces where surrender replaces control, where openness replaces resistance, and where trust replaces fear. Resistance is what keeps us from fully experiencing the presence of the Spirit. It appears in many forms: doubt, Fear, the need for certainty, the desire to control outcomes. We resist because we are afraid of what will happen if we let go. The mind tells us that if we surrender, we will become weak or vulnerable, but the opposite is true. Surrendering to the Holy Spirit does not mean giving up our power. It means aligning ourselves with a power far greater than our own. It is not about losing ourselves, but about finding our true selves beyond the limitations of the ego. Imagine a river flowing effortlessly toward the ocean. It does not resist the current. It does not cling to the rocks along the way. It moves in perfect harmony with the flow of life. But if a dam is built across the river, the water becomes trapped, stagnant and heavy. This is what resistance does to us. It blocks the natural movement of divine energy in our lives, leaving us feeling stuck, burdened, and disconnected from the presence of the Spirit. The moment we release our grip, the moment we let go of our need to control, life begins to flow again. We are carried effortlessly by the grace of God, moving in alignment with divine will rather than struggling against it. Letting go of ego and resistance requires trust. Trust that we are being guided, even when we do not understand the path ahead. Trust that we are held by something greater than ourselves. This trust is not blind faith. It is a deep knowing that arises from experience. When we begin to let go, even in small ways, we start to see the beauty of surrender. We notice that life unfolds with more ease, that the right opportunities come at the right time, that wisdom arises from within us without effort. The Holy Spirit does not force itself upon us. It waits for us to invite it in, and the invitation comes when we release the barriers we have built between ourselves and divine presence. These barriers are often made of fear, the fear of losing control, the fear of uncertainty, the fear of change. But in truth, what we fear losing is often what is keeping us from true peace. The ego clings to illusions of security, but the Spirit offers real security, a security not based on external circumstances, but on the unshakable foundation of divine presence. Letting go does not mean passivity. It does not mean we stop making choices or taking action. It means we act from a place of alignment rather than fear. When we release resistance, our actions become inspired rather than forced. We move through life with clarity, responding rather than reacting, guided by an inner wisdom that is far greater than our own limited understanding. When we surrender the ego and open ourselves to the Spirit, we begin to see the world differently. We no longer view others as threats or competitors, but as reflections of the same divine presence that lives within us. We no longer feel the need to prove ourselves because we know that our worth is already complete. We no longer fear change because we trust that we are always being guided toward what is meant for us. Walking in the presence of the Holy Spirit is not something we achieve through effort. It is something we allow by letting go. When we stop resisting and start trusting, we become like the river that flows effortlessly toward its destination. The Spirit moves through us, guiding each step, filling us with peace and leading us home to the truth of who we are. Living with grace and purpose is the natural outcome of walking in the presence of the Holy Spirit. When we align ourselves with divine presence, life takes on a new depth, a new meaning. We no longer move through the world aimlessly, driven by external pressures or personal ambitions that leave us feeling empty. Instead, we live with a quiet confidence and effortless flow, knowing that every moment has significance and that we are part of something much greater than ourselves. Many people spend their lives searching for purpose, believing that it is something to be found in achievement, recognition, or material success. But true purpose is not something we create. It is something we uncover when we surrender to divine guidance. The Holy Spirit does not give us a rigid roadmap, but invites us to walk in faith, trusting that each step will reveal itself as we move forward. Purpose is not about reaching a particular destination. It is about how we live in the present, how we align ourselves with the love, wisdom, and peace of the Spirit. Grace is the natural state of a life lived in harmony with the Spirit. Grace is not something we earn or achieve. It is something we receive when we open ourselves to divine presence. It is the gentle, unshakable knowing that we are supported, that we are exactly where we need to be, and that life is unfolding in perfect timing. To live with grace means to move through the world without resistance, without the need to control or force outcomes. It means trusting that even in difficulty, even in uncertainty, we are being held in divine love. When we walk in the presence of the Holy Spirit, our actions become infused with deeper meaning. The simplest acts, speaking a kind word, offering help, listening with compassion, become vessels of divine love. We begin to understand that our purpose is not necessarily found in grand accomplishments, but in the way we show up in each moment. We realize that every interaction is an opportunity to bring light, every challenge an opportunity to grow, every day an opportunity to deepen our connection with God. Living with grace and purpose does not mean life becomes free of difficulties. Challenges still arise, but they no longer shake us in the same way. We face them with trust rather than fear, with faith rather than anxiety. When things do not go as planned, we do not fall into despair, but recognize that something greater may be unfolding beyond our understanding. This is the power of grace. It allows us to navigate life with a sense of ease, even when circumstances are uncertain. One of the most beautiful aspects of walking in the presence of the Holy Spirit is that purpose is no longer something we strive for. It is something that naturally emerges. The Spirit works through us in ways we may not even realize. A simple conversation can uplift someone's soul. A moment of patience can change the course of someone's day. A single act of love can ripple out in ways beyond our comprehension. This is the quiet, powerful purpose of a life lived in alignment with the Spirit. To live with grace and purpose, we must cultivate presence. We must listen deeply, not only to others, but to the still small voice within us. We must trust that we are being guided, even when we do not see the full picture. We must let go of the idea that purpose is something distant and instead recognize that it is already here, woven into the fabric of our daily lives. As we continue walking in the presence of the Holy Spirit, we begin to see life not as a series of disconnected events, but as a beautiful, unfolding journey of divine orchestration. We begin to recognize that nothing is random, that everything has meaning, that love is always present. And in this realization, we find not only purpose, but deep, abiding peace. Walking in the presence of the Holy Spirit is not a distant goal, but a present reality, always available to us. It begins with embracing the present moment, where divine presence can be truly felt. It deepens through stillness, where the noise of the mind fades, allowing the Spirit to speak. It requires the surrender of the ego, letting go of control and trusting in divine guidance. And it manifests as a life of grace and purpose, where every action is infused with love, wisdom, and meaning. When we open ourselves to the Holy Spirit, we no longer move through life blindly, struggling against circumstances or searching for fulfillment in temporary things. Instead, we walk with clarity, peace, and unwavering trust, knowing that we are being guided every step of the way. Life flows effortlessly, not because challenges disappear, but because we are no longer resisting the divine presence that carries us through them. May we awaken to this reality. May we live in the fullness of this presence, and may we allow the Holy Spirit to move through us, transforming not only our own lives, but also the world around us. The presence of the Spirit is here now, always waiting for us to recognize it, surrender to it, and walk in its grace.